There we are. I just wanted to talk about a few things. It's been a really eventful week. There's been too much going on. We had the dock worker strike, which was almost catastrophic, although everyone kind of knew it wasn't going to last because of how important it was. Like, we knew something was going to get done because there's a literal emergency. There's also the holiday season coming up, multiple holidays that have lots and lots of shipping needs, probably more so than the rest of the year. And then we had escalation in the Middle East. It's World War III. It's the narrative that keeps floating around. But you know what? Nobody wants World War III. It's not like World War III is just going to like suddenly be there. If it happens, it's going to gradually come upon us, and eventually we'll be like, oh yeah, we are in World War III. But at this point, still not there. People want to say we are, but we're not. It's still a point where it's the normal tensions that have just escalated a little bit. Certain barriers haven't been broken. So that's why the market's continuing to go. And that's one thing you can gain from the market. It doesn't matter so much if you win or lose in the market, if you can get what's actually going on in the world out of it. Because what happens is reality. Narrative dominates the initial news catalyst and everything you see, but what's actually going on is what sustains the market. If the companies are going to survive, people will continue to buy them. People with a lot of money are going to take their money out, and like everybody's got a bunker now, all the billionaires, right? So there's prep commercials on where, hey, we've got food that'll last for decades. It'll still be just fine. The narrative's there, but we're not there yet, and the market tells you that. That's one thing I think I'm really grateful for with trading. It puts perspective on what you think. Because here's why people lose. They come in with their own narrative of the world, and when it doesn't play out, they don't win, and they quit. They just don't realize that's what's going on. They think, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going to go on. Like, I thought I did. I thought I knew things well enough. Like, I can predict trends. I predicted these few random trends, so that means I can predict everything. Everybody kind of thinks that for a while, and then you step into the market and realize, oh, that's not the case. The market humbles you quick. Most people, that's why they say anywhere between 80 and 95% of people fail at trading. A lot of people succeed at investing, but there are even people that fail at that because they have short time horizons. And what you can tell from the chart just of the last couple of weeks, short time horizons don't always work. You know, what if this day is the day you absolutely need your stuff? Because, yeah, sure, prices were this low on the chart, but in the things that you need at specific times, things can be way lower. Like, even if the stock hasn't gone there, the bid-ask spread might spread to that point where people say, oh, geez, the mid-price is at this crazy point. And that might be the time that you need to sell. When somebody finally comes in and goes, oh, liquidity. Like, people with a lot of money see this and go, this is when there are a bunch of people selling. I can finally do what I need to do. Because look at the volume down here. More than any other day, these days, these huge green pumps, these huge red dumps, they have volume. This one, actually, this volume looks like it's from the green day. So that was on the close. Things freaked out on the close on this day, and they dumped on the open here. There wasn't as much volume. That's another thing you can kind of tell. If there's more volume for a pump than a dump, that dump isn't going to go very far. If you see more volume and multiple red days after something like this, then you can start to worry a little bit in the medium term. But if you notice, like here, I have FedEx. This is a perfect example of this. Everybody has an opinion on FedEx because we've all interacted with it in one way or another. But that doesn't mean we know everything about FedEx. We had one bad experience. What if it's because some driver was disgruntled? What if it's because somebody just made a random mistake, you know? Like, it's these problems that we have are really big to us, but if you think about it in terms of FedEx and every shipping company, there are billions of complaints all over the world. Billions. However many people there are probably more complaints in some places. You know, because it's you're working with a system that has to work with so many people and still make a profit and still has the normal corporate greed that everything else has, but actually has success long term. You see something like this, and if it's not going to go down for 2 days if things are okay. Notice it barely went down for one. It had this huge after hours drop. This wasn't during the trading day. This was after hours when volume is way, way lower. And you had a gap down when things opened up. And it went down for a while, but it bounced. And then the next night, it found support. It's kind of trended up. Nice green. And it had been trending up ever since until it turned around. But essentially, it's still at this level. It just had a level change because some big news came out, and now it's resettled at this level. And people aren't accepting that. That's why we had this jumpy pump right here. Because when people see this, the shorts, number one, the ones that got in here are super lucky. They had no idea this was going to happen. Well, I mean, it's earnings, so you were betting that it would happen. You know, when stuff like this happens out of the blue, you don't. But yeah, okay, so people were betting on this. They knew what they were doing. Well, I mean, they knew what they were betting. They didn't know what they were doing. They had a narrative. They bet on it, and they were right. That doesn't mean their narrative was right. It means their bet was right. And I think people confuse that. They think, oh, I won a bunch of money in this big drop. I know something. No, you got extremely lucky. Because if you do this over time, you're going to fail a lot. If you use your narrative, that's where you're going to fail. Your narrative is going to fail you 9 times out of 10. But most people are just going to keep going with it. So what it did to me was it humbled me. I lost a lot of money. I had to rethink a lot of what I thought about everything. It's like, I didn't think this was, I thought blah, 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 and this and that, and the Illuminati and shit. Like, it's not going to work for you in the market. Trust me. If you think you know, no, you're just getting lucky. You might get lucky a few times, but you're getting lucky. These don't happen every day. Although these are the 50-50s, and FedEx is a company I like, but I like to go the other way. I like to wait for something like this when the narrative gets overdone. Because people think, yeah, I was so right, it's going to go down even more because all of these factors that I'm so smart about. Yeah, well, it doesn't. You know, like it sits there sometimes, and that's what it did that day. So a bunch of shorts, number one, covered, because we had this big pump. Sometimes if the market pumps in general, or whatever catalyst is happening, shorts will just cover, longs will jump in, have these short-term squeezes, and then it'll revert back to some kind of mean. And if it doesn't go below that after a long period of time, if you're looking at the short term, the stock's probably not going to go down anymore. I mean, honestly, anything could happen, so you can't think, oh, this is definitely going to happen. But if you're looking for a decent bet on something, if you want to say more often than not this will happen, something like FedEx will bounce on a day like this. So if I see this on one day and it holds overnight, the next day to me is a very short-term buy-in sometimes. If it looks good, if you can get it at the price before it starts taking off, then yeah. And look at, this isn't really a takeoff. It went from the low 250s. It held on there after the squeeze and this drop, and it pumped over a few days to the 70s, the mid 70s. So you could have made roughly $20 a share on that little thing, or $10 a share, or $5, whatever it is. That's not bad on a company like FedEx that you know has security, because it works. Regardless of your opinion, is it going to be there tomorrow? Is it going to be there in 5 years? Oh, they don't have money. Yeah, they have so much collateral. They have the world. They ship everywhere. They have facilities. They have all kinds of property. I don't care if it's bought, leased, whatever. They have property everywhere. They have businesses that aren't them that tie into them. They're like horizontally, vertically, every way integrated. They're going to survive. You know, even if somebody has to buy them out, the FedEx, all the trucks, the planes, everything, it's going to survive, or it's going to get bought out. You know, it has enough staying power. It's not a company in some building in the Bay Area, like all these, like I found a $2 company, it's doing amazing things, it's in this little shopping center in some really janky place in the Bay. Okay, that's a good bet. Or you could do FedEx, which is everywhere. FedEx is, if you hate FedEx, can it bring you a package tomorrow? If everything, like all the worst stuff happened with FedEx, could it bring you a package tomorrow? Yes, and they will. It doesn't matter what's going on. They could literally, like, a factory could explode and they would continue to bring you your stuff. It would be delayed to some areas. We could have a disaster like we do. Stuff is going to get there, except for the areas where they're not allowed to go. It's going to be there, you know, and it's an essential company. So grabbing it when it drops and it doesn't fall anymore isn't a bad idea. So I was looking at this. I was ready to get in and ride it for a while. Probably would still be in it. But I didn't. I had other things to do. It was right here. I was going to get it right at this point. And I thought, nope, I have other stuff I need to do. This would be an unnecessary gamble because I have plays that are in the money and I need to manage them, which is extremely stressful. When you have plays that are in the money for short periods of time and you know you're going to get out soon, but it's very unpredictable, it can be stressful. So it's nice to, if you're using options, to have more shares than you're selling if you're selling options on them, which is what I'm doing. I'm holding shares on stock. I'm selling calls. I'm just trying a strategy that I'm going to eventually talk about in depth. But right now it's essentially just something different. It's not anything new. It's just the way I'm using things that are already available that seems intriguing. So I'm trying it because I've heard people talk about it. And I was like, you know what? Now I'm at a point where I can try this stuff and actually see if it works. So I'm trying a mix of strategies right now, and it's been interesting because strategies that worked for a while stop working, and then new ones don't replace it but also start working. But then there are trades that just continue no matter what. And holding shares long is the one that works the best. So it's best to just collect things and take the hit when it's low. Maybe you shave a little when things are popping so that you can get something out of it, which is what I'm doing too. I'm shaving things. I have this nice position in Old Republic that's super up, and it's been up for a long time. It's been paying me dividends. It's so good that I have to take gains on it. I wasn't planning on taking gains on it, but I've been taking gains on it. And the question was, how much should I sell? Should I sell it all? It's up so much that the dividend doesn't even matter anymore. It's like I've made so much more on the shares than the dividend's going to make me in years, which I would like to have a stock like that or that stock. But it's just been too good of a ride. And I know I'm going to regret it later, but I have to move some of that money. So I've been stressing about that. I have some very volatile plays involving the election right now that I've made a good amount of money on, and I'm continuing to do them until hopefully not the last minute, but the last minute that I can stand to be in them before the election comes up. Because it's kind of funny what I'm betting against both sides. Because it doesn't matter who wins, there's going to be a path forward. It's FedEx and the government are the same thing. It's going to be there. You can complain about it all you want, but November 6th, it's going to be there. January 1st, January 21st, it's going to be there. And something's going to be happening regardless of what's going on. So it's better to just plan for the fact that it's going to keep going and not get too caught up in which way. Because if you gamble to one way and you're right, sure, you're going to make a lot. But if you're wrong, you could be catastrophically wrong. And that's what I'm seeing people do right now. People are betting way too hard on this election like they know. You know, and I can feel it. I thought this time I'm not going to let myself get fooled by everything, but it's impossible. Everybody's fooled by it every year because you really don't know. People don't know how to deal with the fact that they don't know. The overall market is actually doing well. We're a month away from an election, and the market is right next to all-time highs. It hit all-time highs after people said it was going to crash every time. Each one of these red drops, I was in here going like, God, this sucks, but this is when you buy. You know, I'm like the only dude saying it on when it's at the absolute worst point, because I'm just thinking that the whole time. I'm just not jumping into stuff the second it gets red. That's what people, they're trying to catch these pumps, and they're trying to we have to get the perfect price, got to do this, got to trade it, oh my God, I'm up a little, I'm up a lot. In the short term, you have to manage your risk. Like, you have to manage the risk in the short term the same way you would in the long term. The difference is you have to be ready to maneuver when you're investing or trading in the moment. So that's what I've been doing. And it's been absolutely anxiety provoking. It's been so tough because all you do is when you have gains all the time, except for very short periods of time, which people think this is not that long. It's a couple of weeks go by, it's like flat, and then it drops for a week. Then what happens after that? The next month and a half, it's green. And I keep telling people, like, this is what's going to happen. This is what always happens. All right? You get 2022 when we had an absolute down year, you know, and then 2020, but it was up. It ended up. 2022 was the only real down year. And here it was right here. This was 2022. And look what happened. For 2/3 of the year, it was down with these squeezes that you knew were going to burn out. And it's funny, most of the people that watch me are bears that caught me when I was like, this is still going down here in all these spots. And they were the ones fighting me when it was red for 3 weeks or whatever, and it got really bad one week, and there were gap downs daily. People hadn't seen that kind of thing before that got in during the pandemic. They got in after it started coming back. They're new to it. It just went up the whole time, and they didn't know what to do in 2022, so they kind of just lost a bunch of money and then gave up for a while. And now, you know, maybe they're back, maybe they quit forever. But if they're back, they're doing the same thing. And what I was waiting for was, when this happened, people to reject this. This was the one that told me we weren't done. We had this massive red drop. This is where people were absolutely the most bearish. They were terrified at this point. We're not even done. It got lower, right? It bounced from there and came even lower, but right here, people were the absolute most bearish. They weren't even half as bearish right here, but they were still bearish, and they rejected this entire bounce. And this was when I was accumulating. Right here at the absolute lows, probably for these few weeks, and then right here after this madness at the end of the year. And what happened? It just pumped. It went to the support levels that I drew. I drew long-term support. You don't have to go crazy with technical analysis, and that's what I see people doing. They're going with every single indicator because they just want to find the one that tells them this is the one to buy. That's not how it works. Every indicator is only accurate because it's after the fact. During the thing, you'll see it, and it'll say what it's supposed to say, and you won't believe it, or you won't care. You'll just be like, oh, I don't know, what about this? And it doesn't work. So all I look for are the simple things that actually do. And long-term support and resistance works. I look at the weekly time frame. So that's long-term. This is the other reason. Look at where we are long-term. This is the past few years. This is the past decade. When is it down? 2016, the election right here. What happened after that election? It was a smooth pump for a long time. Because there's all this tension right here. This was a point where 2012, it was obvious that the Democrats were going to win. Mitt Romney's going to win. There was nobody, like the Republicans didn't even try. They were just like, well, we're going to lose this one, so we're not even going to try. We're going to wait until the future. You know, and they did. That's why, joke's on us, right? Like, they got us back pretty good. And then, what do you know? It pumps. But what happens? Eventually, that mindset that leads to this pump that you get initially leads to a problem, and the problem becomes catastrophic. Because it's not just what they're doing, it's the fact that the money is allowing this, and they're in synergy with that money. They're finally able to just see where it goes on its own when you let capitalism work on its own, right? And that's really what it is. It's a form of capitalism that does something, and the market moves. That's what people can't define it properly, and they argue about what that means politically. But it's just like money, the finance industry will do this if you let it. If you just step out of its way and give it enough money, terrible things are going to happen, but you'll get this nice smooth curve until something terrible happens. And then it's like, all right, you can either go 55 in your nice car or you can go 95. What are you going to do? And then you can, from there, you can go to 100, 120, 130, whatever it is. People do crazy things. The faster you go, the harder you crash. And the same thing happens in the stock market. So 2016, there was uncertainty. We had a much more tighter financial... Well, we had loose financial conditions because ever since the 2008 crash, we had like no interest rates. You know, and QE constantly. Even when they said they weren't doing QE, they were still doing QE like through the back door. And we still have like repo, you know, go do whatever you want. Basically, they're like, all right, here's repo, do whatever you want. It's just, we'll fix it, right? People don't know we're doing this because it's so complicated. People in their hearts know we're doing this. They just don't know how to explain it. So we're going to do it. And that's what they've done forever. And what do you know? Also, interest rates started to come up during this whole thing too. Somewhere around here, I think. I don't remember. Maybe it was even earlier than that. But interest rates went from a very low point to suddenly we're starting to creep up 0.25% each time. We get to 2.5%, and we start having problems. So that was, 2018, 2019. And then 2020 comes around, and we get the massive pandemic drop. This is the craziest drop I've ever seen. This was terrifying. It looks small on the chart because of where we are, but having a straight month of downward movement, except for maybe 1 week. You know, it started at the end of February. There was this initial just huge drop, and there was kind of a consolidation for a while. And people had to figure out, wow, what are we doing? Is this real? Is it not? We didn't know, because every single time something like that comes along the news, it just goes away on its own. So people were like, it's always been a bad move to get out of the way of these things. I'm not going to get out of the way. And they paid a price for it because this was the time where you needed to get out of the way. So we had the craziest, fastest, scariest drop probably in the history of the stock market, if you look at it percentage-wise, maybe, or just put the chart up and compare any other point in history with that drop. You're not going to find anything except for the worst parts of 2008 and 1929. That whole era that's it. Those are the same kind of drops. But this happened in a world where it wasn't 1929. We were way better off than they were at that point. But something crazy happened, and the world didn't know what to do. So we had this adjustment, and everybody was bearish. Because of this drop, there are perma-bears that will never, ever regain consciousness into reality. They're basically stuck in this world of this month has never stopped for them. And, you know, part of that has nothing to do with the stock market, but the rest of it is this obsession with this idea that they have. So they're on this trip the whole time. And they're the reason that it's going so fast. They keep betting against it when they shouldn't. They're looking at their niche. They're not looking at the big picture. The big picture is this. It's always this. If there's always a chance that it could be something else. That's why this happens, because people think they can't be fooled. They think, I'm actually right about this. This is different. I'm experiencing it now. That's the same thing. We're just going faster. The car just speeds up. And what happened here? The car sped up again. And that's what we've done every single time. 2022 was a reckoning because rates were coming up finally. After we dropped them from once somewhere around 2018. Yeah, actually in 2018, we dropped rates, flipped the market around here. And then we had the 2023, and we finished dropping them. So we get to a point where now we have the lowest interest rates we've ever had, and the market's going insane over it because nobody believes it. And finally the Fed goes, oh, we got to turn this off because this is inflationary. Talk about everything else. Look at this. Is it wages? Not really. Is it the government borrowing money? Mostly, because that's how inflation starts. But it's not just that. People get stuck there. It's also companies pressuring each other, entities holding back, entities being scared and panicking. It's a mixture of everything on a huge scale. Once things turn around, the shorts that are way too confident are the reason that we continue just fine. What happened? What are we gonna do with the debt? We're gonna dump it on some shorts during a period like this. That's the real scam of the world. They'll just come in with the debt that they have, borrow the money from the bears, and turn the economy around so that they can't collect. Like, thank you. People were so confident at this point, they handed everything over. And they provided the fuel to continue. And then we stabilized politically, magically, every single time. You know, it's if shit isn't in the streets in front of your house, it's probably not as bad as you think. And that's not to say like there's not bad things. You're completely missing a lot of really terrible events. Yes, you are, absolutely. But the question is, how widespread are those events actually? And the only people that can tell are the people that are removed, because everybody in there is so emotionally involved they can't see past it. Some can if they're stable enough, if they've trained themselves well enough. It's your mental state, your consciousness, everything. You have to really train to get past all of the emotional damage that the propaganda does. People think propaganda doesn't work on them. Yeah, you know it's fake, but think of the emotional trauma it puts you through as it happens and as you watch people who don't understand it or don't understand it. Because people are dumb. Everyone else says people are dumb. They're sure of that. I say people are dumb. They're not dumb. It's one thing to believe your own fantasy. It's another thing to believe everyone else's fantasy. And that's the ruse, that everybody's stupid. Like, we're an amazing animal. Look at every other animal you've ever seen in life. There are amazing animals. It's an incredible world. It's not just your niche fantasy or your niche fear. It's a whole complex system. And if you don't let go of that niche attachment, you won't be able to step back far enough to see the whole thing. And that's the only way you can stay in the market. That's why I drew these lines. If I zoom in on those, in the short term, when this was all-time highs, this was the information I had on this zone. So based on this and what happened while this was going on, I formed these lines and adjusted them. I had them probably before this, but I adjusted them to where they are somewhere in this point. And they served me so well. It was like clockwork. It hit this central point. Look what happened. It just bounced around it. This was a difficult level to get past. And we hadn't even gotten to the pandemic lows. Down here, way, way lower pandemic lows. But it's not going to get that low without something really catastrophic. And when everybody believes that every single event is catastrophic, we get this, and people get chopped up in it because they're thinking short term. I don't like to think short term. That's why this has been so stressful, having to sell long positions that are extremely, extremely profitable compared to what I paid for them. Some of them were tiny positions, and if I had put more into them, I'd be done. But a lot of them are just like, oh, I got lucky on these, and now I got to manage them, you know? That's what happens. The trades that work are just the ones that I know I need to make, but I don't have passion for. Those are the ones that mathematically line up, and they hit these levels so well that I have to take them. This drop down here, we had this massive red and a nice squeeze that didn't finish. A gap down after all this. The 1 week... the 1 day of hope, whatever it was that created this, just gapped down the next week. It's terrible. And I was bullish. Nobody else was. We had this, and like I said, people were way, way more bearish here. So I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, we are at all-time highs technically. In the short term, it looks like we've moved so much. But in the long term, this is very smooth. 2 straight years of up, up, up. After 2/3 of a year down, and 2 1/3 years up. Beat that. You know, which one is it? And go back through time. That's what always happens. If there's a bad thing, it's like this. All this stuff is nothing. So that's how you make money. At least that's how I make money. I can't give any advice, and I'm not giving any advice. I'm going by what I see. I just want to talk about my experience with this and what my opinion is on it. I have absolutely no idea what's actually going to happen with the market. Never will and never have. I've thought I have before, but trading long enough told me that no, you don't. You never really know. So I have to trade like that. That's the only way I can make money. So that's what I do. You know, I buy these crazy drops. Buy here, see this, out. Probably well before the top of this. This is terrifying to see this much of an up so quickly. And then see this again, feel really good about it, get to be a little bearish for a while, and then turn things around. And here, I was expecting this to be the bottom. So right here, when it went lower, I was feeling terrible because I talked so much shit right here. You know, but then it bounced quickly. And suddenly I was like, all right, maybe I'm right. Oh, yeah, you know. That's what happened with this. I'd been doing it for so long that I figured with what was going on, this was not a pandemic drop. This was just 1/4 of everybody downgrading everything and a bunch of catastrophic events happening in a row, but all within a very short period of time. This scared the world so much that we had this massive drop, and it was just mostly related to earnings. Like, well, we're kind of not going to make as much as before, but we're still going to make a lot of money. But people didn't pay attention, like, not as much as before, it's over. That's the whole thing. Or, it's not over, but it's really bad. Those are the two, it covers 90% of people out there. They're like, it's either over or like, I'm cool, but they still think it's over. Like, oh, it's over and I'm terrified, but I'm acting cool. That's who you're seeing. So you got to get past that. Is it going to go down? Maybe, but it's catching on here, and this is heavy support. Now we're so far above that, if we ever get back down to this, I'm looking at these levels again. These are absolute wonderful levels. If we don't hit these levels, we don't even have the beginnings of a problem. So look at where we are, you know. And I've been pretty sure that the race was going to go either way multiple times. This has been insane. This is the craziest selection I've ever seen. It's absolutely terrifying to know that this is reality. Eventually it's going to be over, and we'll be like, all right, well, that's old news and everything's fine either way, no matter how pissed we are about whatever. That's why it's so much easier not to pick a side, because if you go by what's going on and don't get your heart in the team ring, it's so much easier when stuff doesn't go the way you'd hoped, because you're still going to hope it goes one way or the other. You know it's going to go one of two ways, and you're like, well, I don't like this, but I like this and that, but I get that dude, I don't like that, but he does that, and I don't know about her, she's doing this. It's just you don't know. You don't know. If you don't pick a side, then you're terrified of just not knowing. You know, but if you pick a side, you know, but you're terrified of the other thing that is equally unlikely to happen. You think the fantasy that you have is coming real, and that the nightmare of the other side isn't happening. And people that think the other thing have the exact opposite. They're like, oh no, it's actually... I've seen both sides saying that all their rights are going to be gone with whichever one wins. It's like, are they gone now? Because it's going to do... Whatever's happening now is what's going to happen after. For the most part. It's going to be a few social things. People are like, oh, yeah, it's our victory. You know what happens with those social things? They flip the next time the other person's on. And the pendulum swings both ways every time. It never stops. It's got momentum. We're not sitting still through space. We're moving continuously and not just in a straight line. It's like light. Light isn't just in a straight line. It's doing all this shit. It's going all over the place. It's doing things at levels we can't even finish observing at this point, you know? But here we are. We're at a point, we're at all-time highs. Companies aren't looking bad. We have an election where one of two people is going to win, and some big problem is going to be solved, but everything else is going to be completely the same or worse. You know, they're very basic financial and social problems are just going to slightly shift for either one, and people think it's going to be this crazy thing. It's not. Plan for whatever happens. Don't get too caught up in the thing. Because I was very sure that Trump was going to win for a while, because Biden was surely going to lose with the fact that he is literally dead at this point. And then it switched okay, finally, there's an actual candidate on the other side that isn't going to die in 5 minutes, probably. You know, and he's going to live for a while. Look at Jimmy Carter. That was terrifying. But that's what happens to presidents eventually. I mean, think of what Jimmy Carter saw. His time in office and in politics and all that. Terrible. I wouldn't want to be any of the presidents ever. I don't want to ever do that job. That is the most horrifyingly, gut-wrenchingly terrible job that I can imagine. Having to control everything and still be a person and not know anything. And be just narcissistic or stupid enough to get out there and do it. That's absolutely terrifying. But are the smart people doing it? No. You know, only the weird, it's the weird creative types. It's all the people fear what they are when they're in power. And all the people that are against what's going on are the ones that are like, I'm this creative type, I'm not the whatever type, and it's all encroaching in my thing, and I don't know. Well, yeah, they are too. They're just as much of a mess, but they got lucky and they went in this path. You know, your creative weirdness just pushes you in some direction at some point. Everybody has some kind of creative weirdness. It's just what degree and in what direction. You know, and they got to the point where they were in politics, however it started. Both candidates have a very shady past. You can't get past either one's absolute. Like, you don't really know who either of these people are. You think you do, but you really don't. And what could happen? Well, I could be overmodulating the whole time. I don't know. It seemed fine, but I've been going on a rant. So anyway, let me get back to the point. It's crazy either way. I thought both sides were going to win. Today I heard a clip that Harris said that she feels she's the underdog. You know? Well, that I didn't think of that. I thought they were pretty sure they were going to win at this point, and it doesn't sound like it. So, you know, it's 50-50. And we don't know. We're looking at the image. You can't tell by going by the social issues what's going to happen. It's the power structure issues. What are the actual deep core issues that are so boring and basic you don't pay attention to them? Those are the things at stake. And that's not what people are looking at. They're looking at the video that makes them mad about whatever thing they're most passionate about. Every single one of them. Me, you, all of us. We're all scared by this. The difference is I know that I'm being controlled, and I know that I can't avoid it. I know that they're more powerful than me, and they know way more than I ever will. And I've come to terms with that. I've come to peace with it. You make peace with the fact that the system is way smarter and more capable than you will ever be. So you can't just fantasy world be like the superhero thing you think and come in and fix it all. It's not going to happen. You know, the system's going to crush you if you think you're going to change everything you want to change. But you could just tweak the trajectory of it. That's all you could do. And if you do that, that could be huge, because that over time is massive. That's why I say investing is the best way, because they've done test after test and it always wins. And by always, I say more than 90% of the time. I would bet 99% of the time the investing strategy wins over the short-term trading strategy, because the short-term trading strategy will make way more money in the short term, but the long-term losses will be so great that you can't match the just basic gains of everything else. That's why I have my long position no matter what happens. I'm not dumping any of it. I'm just going to add to it if it drops. I'm going to take the pain. People take as much money as they can. They can't afford to lose it, and it will hurt them if they lose it, so they treat it as if it's a wound that's they're protecting. You know, they're like, I'm way too vulnerable right here, and I don't know what's going. Just take me, market, put me where I'm supposed to go to be a millionaire. It won't. It'll absolutely eat you up instantly. But if you just go, all right, where is it going? I will watch where it goes and go with that. When it goes this way and I didn't think so, what did the numbers say? Did I go with the numbers beforehand? Probably not. Most of the time the numbers are going to be right, and people just bet against it because their heart says to. Or they went down some rabbit hole that convinced them this is the way. It's all emotional. And that's what you have to control. It's not controlling your, oh, it hurts when it loses. It's controlling your, I think I know what's going on because of my fantasy world. It's not going to work. So I'm just sitting there waiting. You know, I'm taking gains on the winners. I'm leaving my long-term plays on. I'm adding to them when things are crazy, but I'm taking the short and medium-term plays off, because they're the ones that are important right now. They're the ones that could get crushed either way. So I'm going to try to ease into either direction when it's capable. You know, I've got plays on that are basically neutral at this point. If you can move just slightly in one direction, that'll be great. But I don't have a clue at this point. People think they know. Maybe they do. I have zero clue. It's so 50-50 to me at this point, because I'm so outside of this thing. I can watch both people without being offended, and very few people can actually do that. Me and people that I know can do that, because I think that's why we're friends, because we can step back and go like, this is stupid. I'm not going to get emotionally invested in something that definitely won't matter in the future. People put all of their energy into that thing that is not relevant anymore. Here's a perfect example. Think of every rapper you've ever seen. They don't last long, do they? The ones that last are the ones that get into business. All the other ones fade. Doesn't matter how good they are, they fade if they don't get into business. And the reason is you need a way to stay relevant when your music sucks, because you're not going to be creative forever. You're creative because you're hungry. And once you get everything you need, you just walk around thinking the world's made for you. So you don't work on it anymore. You don't practice. You're not learning new songs. You're not listening to a whole lot of new stuff. You're just stuck in the like recording, playing, performing loophole. You don't have time to be creative because you're so exhausted from it. And every musician goes through it. Doesn't matter how good you are. And if they can do something else and take a break for a while, they can come back. And those are the ones that survive. They take a break. When they have something, they come back. Because they know, I don't need to come back. I'll just wait. And maybe I'll never come back and be at peace with that. That's when you can write some good music. When you just want to write music because you need to write music for money, it's not going to be there. You're going to be doing what every other band does. Terrible music and changing genres and pretending you're getting away from your core because you want to experiment, but really you just can't think of anything and it hurts. So that's admit that, or you're not going to succeed in that realm either. So anyway, let me tie this into just kind of a final thought here. So step back, look at everything that's going on. What does the data say? It doesn't matter which one you think is more important, which candidate you think is the good one or the bad one or the least evil one or whatever it is. Just look at what's actually going to happen and react in the moment, because you'll have plenty of time. If one candidate wins, you got 4 straight years of that candidate. So you will have time to adjust to whatever it is. Are we going up or are we going down initially because of the differences in tax and regulation? That's the big question. The short term is going to be very volatile. If taxes go down, regulations go down, harassment for crypto stops, things are going to pump short term just because it's finally over. And all the fanboys who wanted that to happen are going to go wild with everything they bought. They're going to buy way more, and it's just going to be this huge pump. They're letting it all out, all the locked up capital from people that either want Trump to win or don't want him to win is going to flow out in the direction of profit. So are we keeping money there, or are we moving money to other things? Are we going in more into bonds? Is the Forex market going to be more important? Is crypto going to be relevant? Crypto has the most at stake out of everything. The market's going to be fine. It'll pump or dump depending upon the candidate because of tax and regulation and all that. But then the realization of like, okay, well, if we don't have any taxes and regulation, we can do whatever we want and let's go with it. So great. We're not stressed anymore. And then if it's the other way, you're like, okay, some of this money's going to come out. We're going to have to pay more. So how do we adjust to that? And then they just adjust to it and they do their thing. Just like everything else. It's not like either candidate is going to crash the entire thing, because they need the economy to run too. Both candidates need the economy to run. They can't. No, it's very difficult for a candidate to win on a terrible economy. And each time, we've basically had an upward market when the election happens in some form or another. There's a panic, and then it's like, oh, we're still kind of in an upward trend. Is this going to happen this year too? Probably. If Harris wins and we have a panic because people they see are regulations and taxes and stuff like that, and also the changes in code and stuff, then yeah, they're going to freak out and they're going to sell. It's going to probably dump. It could pop for a little bit on just, who knows, just on relief in general, but there's probably going to be a cap on this thing. And if Trump wins, people are going to flip out because the money's there again. In fact, the money's going up. So everything is moving. Taxes are moving one way or the other. They're not sitting still. Regulation's doing the same thing. Normally, each election stuff is going to be roughly the same. This one is going to be a lot more than we've seen in the past. So that's why it's 50-50, because things actually matter this time. And not that they don't in other times, but financially, things are extremely important right now. And also with geopolitical tensions, they basically need to funnel more money to all this stuff. So either candidate could win. And here, I hate to break it to you, but here's what will happen regardless. All these things both sides hate are going to continue. The wars are they're going to fund those things no matter who wins. There's not going to be a third-party candidate that comes in and actually gets something done, and we know that. And both of those people, most of their donors are the same, or at least they're from the same industries trying to accomplish the same things. And everybody's got political beliefs, but even in that space, they have more money and more influence. So whatever they do, they're going to do. We're going to have this volatility. It's probably spike and then crush once people realize everything's fine. In fact, before people realize everything's fine, the vol crush is going to happen. And that's what's going to tell us things are okay. You can trade volatility, and a lot of people do. But if it's more, I use it as a sign to tell me that the longs are okay again. You basically, the best way to make money long term is pull the brakes on the longs when things get a little crazy. And then when you start seeing the downward movement and you've gotten to a point where prices look good again, don't be afraid to slowly add over time. You're going to be down when it happens, but there's no way to time the bottom perfectly. You either get lucky or you don't. So it's better to just know it's going to bounce at some point, but be ready that like we could have a 2020 or we could have a 2022 or we could have any other year. You know, look at this. This was 2021 right here. We had the craziest drop we've ever seen in a short amount of time, and then just smooth sailing. Even though these drops right here were probably scary in the time, they weren't that bad. This was where I learned my lessons finally. Like, I'd spent years rejecting the bull market. I spent just so long just sure that the bull market wasn't going to win. And you know what? It never worked out. I was completely wrong. These always stop. And once they don't, it won't matter anyway. So trying to go to this perfect downside play and be Michael Burry, don't go for it. Just ask yourself this. Can they inflate their way another 6 months? Don't think about 10 years, 5 years, 1 year. Can they inflate themselves 3 months? Can they inflate themselves for a week? If the answer is yes, we're not done. And they can inflate themselves a lot more than people realize. This is nothing. What we're seeing right now is very similar to the 90s, but added to the 70s. It's a little different because the technology is here now. The 90s and today have one difference. Tech wasn't there in the 90s. Tech was just starting. It had been going for a long time up to that point to them, but in the long term, in the grand scheme of things, it was just a little blip, you know? So we have this point where things are going to change, volatility is going to happen, whatever it is going to come back in some way. It's like, are we going to funnel more money to defense contractors? Yeah. Where are defense contractors? Where are they? They're in America. Where is this money going to go? It's going to go right back here. It's just going to go to the people you don't want it to go to. And you're so bent on not wanting that to happen that you're going to bet against it or get emotionally involved. No, it's going to go to the people you know it's going to go to. If you just bet on that, you'll be fine. That's why it always works. Because the people with all the assets and resources set the direction. And you either go with it or you get crushed. So if you get lucky, if you Michael Burry something, you're going to be chasing that for the rest of your career. Michael Burry is always wrong now. You know, he got perfect place, perfect time. He ended up in the perfect place at the perfect time, and look at where we are. You know, he's been trying to get that again forever. He deletes his account because he says, it's over, here it is, sell everything. He literally says sell it all or just sell or whatever. Flat out telling you what's going on. Then he goes away for a while, probably because he gets in trouble for doing that. Some people control the world. Okay, fine. You either go with it and you use the money to do good things that lead to a change in that, or you get chopped up by it. You know, it's just, you're taking money from the thing that you don't like. And that's what I'm doing with all of my plays. People are like, why would you trade DJT as Trump stock? That's exactly why I'm trading DJT. That's exactly why this play that I've been working on with the covered calls has been working so well. It has been, all the premium on these options is phenomenal for a low price stock. And it moves so much. You know, and it's probably going to not work. Because here's the thing. If Trump doesn't win, that stock's done. So I'm not going to be touching that thing a few weeks before the election. Like, this is, I'm taking my last little bits of gains from this thing and then dumping. Because all I wanted was the volatility. And there was no better place to get it than there. For the price that I was looking for. If I had more money, I'd just trade FedEx every day. You know? But I can't. I have to trade the momentum. I have to trade what's there. So I use that as a springboard to get to other stuff. I'm just concluding everything here, talking about the fact that we're up right now. The election's coming on. It's a 50-50 thing. You can't get too emotionally invested in it. If you want to make money going forward, you really can't be emotionally invested in what happens with the election. You just have to take it as what it is. Do your thing, have your opinions, let it out, talk, whatever. Go down your rabbit holes. But at the end of the day, step back and go like, I was just in a rabbit hole. I'm afraid of all the stuff they told me to. That's it. If you can take a break from that, you're good. So yeah, let me wrap this up. Basically, that's what I'm doing. I'm adding to my longs as it goes down. Either way, it's going to be okay. We're either going to get a pop if taxes and regulations come down, or we're going to get a bit of a drop if taxes and regulations go up. And crypto is going to get hurt worse because the SEC is going to continue to be what it is. The SEC is run by Gary Gensler right now, and it's if Harris wins, Gensler's staying on. So we're going to get the exact same thing. No matter what the rhetoric is, they're basically telling us, yeah, we're not changing anything. So that doesn't mean crypto's over. It just means it's not going to be able, it's going to be, lawsuits are going to continue. The money spigot's not going to be turned on as far as we want. So it's going to be a bit of a retrograde, a regression. And if it goes the other way, we're going to have this pop, but there's going to be consequences to that. Eventually that bubble will burst because it's an extremely quickly inflating bubble. Basically going either way on this, trying to go for these longs. I've got some short-term positions that I'm managing, trying to dump the volatility on DJT, get out of it. FedEx was a good one on this drop because you knew it was going to pump after that. If it didn't go down for 2 days after something like this, it's probably going to have a bit of a bounce. A very small bounce, but something you can make 10 to 20 bucks a share off of. That's why I liked FedEx down here. Drop, didn't go any further. I'm in. That's a good one. Right there. Take your 5, 10, 15 bucks. I would have probably taken about between 5 and 10 bucks and been out of that thing. Done. That's a great win on something like FedEx. So that's what I'm looking for. And then as soon as the election happens and the official count comes through, if it drops, I'm buying. If it pumps, I'm riding and shaving as it gets unsustainably high. Or when there's some kind of a crazy trade war escalation that was basically what crushed it last time. That's what happened in 2018. We're flying in 2017 because people are like, all right, the gates are open again. It's like, are the gates kind of closed or are they fully open? That's what we're doing. Neither one is shutting the door completely. It's either the gates are coming in a little bit or they're completely opening and we're flooding out. So that's what I'm looking for this time. Which way are the gates turning? Way more than 2020, way more than 2016, more than 2012 even. This has been insane. It's like 2008 level insane, but maybe even more so now because we have this crazy storyline. And in 2008, it was a new storyline. We had the whole like 2001 to 2008 experience was a whole different thing. The world became what it is today in that short period of time. Are we going to get something like that? Maybe. Look at AI, look at robotics. It's not far off. It's now that was my point. In the 90s, the differences between now and the 90s, this shit wasn't going to happen in the 90s. The 90s, everything was way too early. That's why we had that crazy drop. Now the stuff's happening. And there's going to be new crazy stuff. That's going to be extremely volatile and speculative. But the stuff that is going to work is going to continue to work. And inflation is going to provide the fuel. Is inflation going to continue? Will there be inflation? If the answer is yes, the market's going up. End of story. Have a good night.